surface operations. So for those of you from out of town, that's David's boat. He uses it a lot for auxiliary work. It's a beautiful Sea Fox, and it's been a great facility for us. This is preparation for some two-boat towing that we did last year. So to get going with surface operations, we got to do some training first, right? And get qualified. So here's John Swink doing some nav training. Once we're trained, we got to have the right equipment. I don't know how far south this audience extends, but sometimes in the middle of the winter, it gets a little chilly up here. So that's us out on a patrol about 2 years ago. It's important that we help each other while we're out there. So especially with some of the more awkward gear, don't hurt yourself trying to put it on all alone. Get somebody to help out. We're all part of a team here, aren't we? This is a picture from the Pursuit Coxswain School that operates here in Charleston. This is part of the Maritime Law Enforcement Academy. The white boat in the center is a simulated bad guy. The 33 on the right is Pursuit Coxswains being trained before they are sent out to boat stations near the border states or places that have a lot of migrant issues. And finally, here's a couple of good safety features in this picture. The deckhand is using a skiff hook to put a tow on our boat. Guy behind him is holding him. That's his backup. He's also holding on to the boat. So we'll leave it at that and jump over to the actual presentation slides. Okay, and somehow I have to go full screen with this. Okay, we're full screen now? Okay.
Folks, somebody's got a TV in the back. Yep.
Well, it's not me. But speaking of me, I'll do an intro because I know there's people out there I haven't met yet. My name is Walter Runk. I'm a coxswain with Flotilla 12-6 in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Got about 600 hours as a lead. I work here in Sector Charleston. Also fly as aircrew in the auxiliary air program. And on the side, I've got a part-time job running a dive boat and inspected vessel here in town.
Walter,
So,
sorry to interrupt. I still see the Coast Guard photo. This is Mike Young.
Mike, I heard you there. Are you seeing the slideshow now? It should say risk management at the top.
Yeah, I don't see.
No,
that,
you've shared. You haven't shared that. You have to go back to sharing that right file. You shared a file versus the screen.
Let me stop the share and then do a new share.
Yes, sir.
Which one is it I want?
That's it.
That's a good copy.
All right, that's what we needed then. Okay. Previous slide was just intro stuff. Coast Guard operations. It's busy, complex stuff with a lot of moving parts. So there is no way to make it completely risk-free. What we have to do is get as good as we can get at managing the risk. And that is a process that extends throughout the mission, from the planning phase all the way out to the closeout. So in terms of the planning, the point I'd like you to all take away from this slide is that mission plans and risk profile should be reported to your OIA. When you request orders, put in a plan in the comments block and tell them what you plan to do. When you're done, write down what you did. Just a blank set of orders. It's difficult for us to brief the command center staff. This happens 3 times a week in Sector Charleston, where the auxiliary operations are briefed out to a teleconference for all of the sector units. So a blank mission there just looks like you don't have anything on your mind in terms of what you're going to do while you're out there. Not a good look for us. So please put some detail and some thought into that. All right, so we make decisions based on how much risk we're willing to accept, either personal or in the auxiliary. I would add to that another bullet point, global risk. We are all sitting here in the middle of the largest exercise in risk management this planet has ever seen. So look at it, what you see on the news, look at it through the lens of risk management, right? That's what we're trying to do with whether it's the health of an individual or the economic health of a nation. This is all being done through principles of risk management. And by doing that as best we can, that improves our performance and increases the safety inherent in our operations. It is a mindset. You know, if you're constantly in the business of keeping track of what might hurt you, it ends up getting baked into virtually every aspect of your life. The term they use at the bottom here is safety culture. So definitionally, it's a continuous systematic process of identifying and controlling risk in all activities according to a set of preconceived parameters, right? We're not making this stuff up on the fly. That's why we have to train before we go out. And then by applying appropriate management policies and procedures, detecting the hazards, assessing the risk associated with them, implementing and monitoring the controls to support our decision making as we work our way through the mission. So lots of different kinds of steps that we take to mitigate the risks. Ask for help, change our plans. What's the extreme version of changing our plans? Well, cancel our plans, right? We're volunteers. We don't have to do any of this stuff. But if we're going to do it, we're supposed to do it within the boundaries of the professionalism and the risk management principles that have been offered to us. So we might delay our start time, wait for some weather to clear out, change our route, and stay away from shallow water if it's low tide, change our crew. Right? If we had a training mission scheduled and all of a sudden it gets turned into a case before we go out, maybe that's not a good time to bring the trainees along. Right? We're going to have legal crew with or without them. So don't be shy to make changes at the last minute. All right, Commandant Instruction 3503 Alpha, that's the risk management instruction. That's the one that brought us into line with the active duty risk management training models. So it trims the process down from 7 steps to 5, brings back before the St. Pete model that we used for going through GAR 1.0. It brought back the risk assessment matrix. We'll take a look at that in a couple of slides, and requires the use of GAR 2.0. Generalized assessment of risk. All right, so we use the PEACE acronym to remember these things, and we score each one of them low, medium, and high. So that's the planning, the event, the assets in terms of crew, the assets in terms of boats or other resources, communications and supervision, and the environment. So our mitigation strategies, we have 5 options represented in the STAR model. We can spread the risk out, disperse the risk by taking more time between events or throwing more assets at the mission. You can transfer it if we've got a choice in assets available, go with the one that's best suited for the mission that we're trying to conduct. We can avoid it, wait for the risk to subside, weather, lighting, other environmental conditions. We accept it if the benefit outweighs the risk. Or we reduce it by mostly preparatory stuff like equipment, training, rest ahead of time, that kind of mitigation strategy, which is part of what we're doing right now, isn't it? We train, we talk about this stuff, we think about it, and we do that before we get out on the water. All right, so here's the risk acceptance matrix. I hope everybody's seen this. You don't have to have it all memorized, but I do want you to memorize one corner of this. That's on the right-hand side, second one down. When you do your risk assessment and you do your gain assessment, if you come up with a medium risk, low gain mission, you are required to get the CO to approve that mission before you go out. So think about that. Why would we take a medium risk to achieve a low gain? There might be reasons to do that, but that's really above our pay grade as far as whether we make that call. So, you know, the top row, we're green across the board. If it's low risk, generally speaking, we can do it. On the second row, if it's medium risk, but high gain, we can still accept the mission. We have to monitor things more closely. Same thing for medium gain. But for low gain, if you call in when you establish your guard and tell them that you are going out and you have a medium risk for a low gain, that watchstander should understand that you're doing something that the captain or the order issuing authority has to have specifically endorsed. And if they're on the ball and he's nearby, I'd check. He should be checking with them. So think about this when you're doing your risk assessments. If you come up with something that is medium risk but only low gain, and by definition, all of our training missions are low gain. So you don't want to put yourself or anybody else in the box where something goes wrong and you knew up front that you were taking a medium risk to achieve a low gain mission. So stay away from those. If you feel the need to do those, make sure you're covered. And if you can't communicate the need for it adequately to the officer in charge, then you probably shouldn't be doing it either. Okay, depending on where you are in your auxiliary career, you may or may not have taken the Introduction to Risk Management training course. It's not too bad, especially if you're locked in the house. Go ahead and get that one knocked out. That's a day in the life of a boat station with the Master Chief, dealing with his crew as the day goes on and the missions get tougher and tougher. The annual risk management, that shouldn't say TCT refresher, but that is a course that they have not yet allowed us to deliver online. So when that happens, we'll do something similar to try and make it easy for people to knock that one out at home. The content's a little bit less one way, right? We try and break up into groups and talk things out amongst ourselves. So I think they're still trying to figure out how to do that online. More on that when we hear from National. So when we're setting up for a mission, everybody should be looking at these questions here. We got the right facility. We're going to need a bigger boat. Is the weather okay? Is it going to be okay? Do we have the right people around? Do we even know what we're doing? Am I personally ready for the mission? Are the people around me ready for the mission, right? We're responsible to look out for ourselves and look out for each other. All right, here's an old aviation mnemonic for you. I'm safe. It's how pilots are supposed to tick through the things that might cause the flight to not go so well. Illness, medication, stress, alcohol, fatigue, and eating. All right. There's a note here, marijuana is not legal for use under federal law. I don't know if it's legal for use anywhere in District 7. You would not want to be involved in a mishap and have marijuana be a factor in that. All right, the keys to achieving safety, right? We've got this whole whopping training program and this whole great long chain of qualifications to get somebody from prospect to recruit to new member to trainee all the way up to crew qualification. And the goal we're shooting for here is not just to get you through the check ride, not just to get the PQS book filled out. We want you proficient at what you're doing. We want you trained to a standard where you can work on any boat that you may end up on, not just the one that you trained on or not just your boat. So we got a little pointer back at the risk management tools, Peace Star, GARP 2.0. The 12-hour club, that's a reference to the minimum number of hours to maintain your currency as boat crew in the course of a year. I'm sure none of you are in that situation. Just keep an eye out for those people that are, because they're probably not as adept in their skills as they ought to be. Mishap reporting. I wish this conference service had a polling function, because I would ask at this point if anybody's ever filed a mishap report. And you can't see it, but I got my hand up. Right, Susan?
You've got yours up. I do not have mine.
All right. Got mine up. I filed a mishap report. I had a guy get hurt on a boat that I was a coxswain on, and I'm still here. Nothing happened bad about it. But at least they know that there was a problem, and they've got the data if they ever want to do some analysis of the risks associated with surface operations. Okay. Yeah, there was no punishment involved. In fact, nobody ever even responded back to me. I don't know where the thing is now, but I did fill it out. And there is a risk associated with not filling one out. Okay, if a crew, let's say, is injured and you don't fill out a mishap report and then he files a claim, now you've got a problem as the operator, as the lead, as the coxswain. And this stuff gets sanitized. The names are scrubbed off of it, and summaries of that are sent to Roy Savoca, who's one of the guys that helped put this workshop together. Okay, coxswains out there, your responsibilities, let's review through these. Obtain orders from your order issuing authority. Well, that's going to be tricky when they shut down AOM at the end of the month and don't bring the new thing up until April 15th. But as it turns out, we're not doing a lot of order requests right now. Sector Charleston, we were still allowed to do low risk, medium, or high gain missions, but they have to be at the request of the air station or the sector or the boat station that would normally be issuing your orders. So that's a conversation I've had with Ms. Corcoran and Mr. Rieger. For those of you out of the area, those are our sector OXLOs, and we have not had any request for such missions. You want to make sure that the facility is current, not only now, but that it's still going to be current by the time the orders get closed out, because there's been situations where people went out for a patrol, and between the time that the patrol ended and they tried to file the orders, the facility had timed out and they were not able to file the orders. So that is a financial risk that you must manage as the owner and/or operator of the mission. Same thing for crew certifications. If you've got people that are due for check rides and other various things, those generally will run till the end of the year, the calendar year. This course that you're taking has traditionally been required to be completed by the end of June, and if you did not get it done by the end of June, you were not crew as of July 1st. But that date has been pushed back to the end of September. So when that comes around, you will have this one in your portfolio or on your training record, and that should not be an issue for you. Coxswain's responsible for the entire crew, from when you start until when everybody is gone. So part of that responsibility includes making sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to do, especially the new folks. All right. If there was a contest function in here, I would ask if anybody out there knows which nav rule talks about lookouts. If you know the answer, type it in the chat box. I can't see the chat box the way I'm looking at this thing.
I can actually share with people. So if somebody knows the answer, go ahead and type it in, and I will share with the.
David, if you could just tell me if anybody comes up with an answer for that one. Which navigation rule talks about maintaining a proper lookout?
Yep, waiting.
One or two.
Oh, wait, you guys could try the raise your hand function. We're running ahead of schedule, so I'm perfectly happy to sit here and wait for somebody to come up with the right answer.
Somebody said Rule 5.
Rule 5 it is. Give that man a lollipop.
Okay, Barry Bittman is a winner.
Fantastic. Congratulations. Was it Barry?
Barry, yep.
All right, Barry. If you're from outside of Sector Charleston, I'm embarrassed that my guys didn't come up with that first. Okay, direct supervision when facility is being operated by a crew member. All right, even if the crew member is the owner of the boat, still supposed to be right there making sure that he's doing it right. Just because somebody knows how to drive a boat doesn't mean they know how to do it the Coast Guard way. And yeah, make sure the helmsman does not leave the helm station, I guess. That one pretty much explains itself there. Kill switches, not all boats have them, but seem to be more and more common. All right, check your crew before they go out. You know, make sure they're okay to do what you're going to need them to do. If somebody's got a broken arm, they probably don't belong in a boat where you might need to put somebody in a side tow. Fatigue standards, the Aux Ops policy manual. That's why this, we'll get into it a little bit later, but that would be a good thing to review while we got some downtime here. Keep track of not only how much underway time you've got, but what your day was like before you even got on the boat. We've all looked at the Hillsborough incident, and that happened after these guys had already been through most of a day, some of them in a work environment. And those of you that are involved with aviation know that this is something that's paid very close attention to. Crew rest. Personal protective equipment. Your RNS guy should be on top of maintenance for anything that has maintenance procedure cards associated with it. Top of that list would be inflatables. If you're using the Mustang 3183, there's a PMS, there's a MPC that goes with that you're supposed to go through and do a check on it and record that you've done the proper maintenance. Okay. Do we want to read all this?
No. You could read the
Okay. It's critically important that the coxswain evaluate each crew members' physical abilities prior to getting underway. So coxswain's the second line of defense against somebody that should not be out on the boat. First line of defense is the individual himself, right? If you show up at the marina, you ought to be ready to go out. But if the coxswain thinks you're not, his word's going to take the day. So don't put him in the situation of having to kick you off the boat when it's obvious you shouldn't be out there in the first place. Not only are we responsible for certifying our own fitness for duty, we've got to keep an eye on each other. So if you see somebody that's become unresponsive, checked out of the mission, but still on the boat, you got to let the coxswain know. Figure out what's going on there and make sure it doesn't happen again. Okay. Yeah, we want to just get a sense of where everybody else is before we get out there and get underway. I made a note here about alcohol use. We had an accident or mishap in another district a year and a half ago with two coxswains on board the facility, and they ran it into a bridge, and they were both well above the legal limit for blood alcohol. So they are no longer in the auxiliary, but they are not the only people around who like to drink and drive boats. So let's just make sure that we're not around those people, at least not in the same boat. Okay, I guess we don't have to credit the Port Authority for this anymore. If you see something, say something. Use your risk management tools. Operational risk management, that's the process of continually evaluating what's going on, having an open conversation with you and your crew, making sure that you're approachable if you are the lead, the coxswain, or the aircraft commander, and that people are willing to say, hey, I don't think this is right. And get some rest. We'll all be well rested prior to our next mission, I imagine. Mobile devices. Prohibited without permission from the coxswain. Now, personally, I don't have a problem with people taking a picture with a phone, but to make a call, to take a call, to send a text, I want to know if that's really necessary. Now, we also have got the situation where the watchstander, when you establish your guard, very often will ask for a cell phone number. And for our friends out in Division 2, who are literally hundreds of miles from any Rescue 21 tower or Coast Guard watchstander, they do their guard checks on a cell phone. Now, you still need to stick with the rules here. Helmsman's never going to be using the phone. And if the coxswain must use, you're supposed to come to a dead stop. All right, time for our next pop quiz. Who can tell me what? Oh, I already did that one. Oh, never mind. Well, that was Rule 5.
Yes.
Barry already won that one. I thought I had 2 questions in here. Okay, radio watch. Channel 16. That's not in the NAV rules, but it's in the Code of Federal Regulations. If you've got a marine radio on the boat, you must maintain a watch on 16. I don't know what the percentage of boats out there doing it, but it is way low in the wreck boating community. So we want to make sure that we are reachable by the public on 16 the way they're supposed to call us. If you're just parked on whatever your guard channel is and not on 16, and somebody sees you there and tries to hail you and cannot reach you, and the watchstander doesn't pick up their traffic, very awkward situation to have somebody think, well, I could see the Coast Guard 100 yards in front of me, and I tried calling them on the radio and they never answered. I've had that happen with other public safety agencies, and it's not a good look for us. It was the other guys that weren't on 16, by the way. We were. All right, in all radio communications, we act as professionals. It takes a lot of practice. It's not a comfortable thing for a lot of people, but just be careful what you say on a microphone because it's not encrypted. It goes out to everybody that's there. There's no rule against listening to 21 or other Coast Guard channels if you're a private boater. So even if you're talking with somebody you know, keep it clean. Okay, the happen upon policy reminder. Hope everybody knows what this is, because it's one of the things that you if you discover a vessel during a routine patrol that asks for our assistance and has not been in contact with the Coast Guard or a private tow service, we can give them a non-distress tow. That is called the auxiliary carve-out. When the laws were changed to protect the private the commercial towing industry from competition with the government, there was a concern that the auxiliary would lose their proficiency if they were not allowed to tow. And so that is one of the very few things that we're allowed to do that the active duty Coast Guard is not supposed to do, non-distress towing. So you make the decision, you let the watchstander know what's going on, give him the information he needs to keep an eye on you, and then go ahead and take care of the distressed vessel. All right, they have the option of diverting you if you're on a higher priority mission. Okay, if you have a facility and you're in trouble, it doesn't matter whether you're on orders or not, Coast Guard will come and get you. They will. So there is a little bit of a close relative to the non-distress tow situation, but your boat does have to be a facility. All right, safety of the crew, the public, and the vessel more important than the mission. All right, so we've all got our PLBs now. Make sure they're registered. If you get a new RNS officer in your flotilla, make sure he knows how to check the registrations on these things. You can transfer those over so that when they expire, the email that comes from NOAA goes to the right person. And hazmat situations. We don't have any hazmat requirements in the auxiliary. There is some training available. I believe it is ICS 5. It's part of the Marine Safety Qualification for Environmental Education Management. I think MEEM. It might just be IS 5, but that's something that you could do online while we're stuck in the house here. Okay, only do what you can do. If you get asked to take care of something that's beyond your equipment or beyond your crew, let the watchstander know. We had a case here a couple of years ago where we had finished up with a helicopter training mission after dark one night, and the watchstander called and said that there was a boat coming in from offshore taking on water, and they wanted us to head out and meet it. We were the only boat available, and we were already underway. And I told him we didn't have a pump, and the guy said, "Don't worry about the pump. Just go out there and pick them up if it sinks." I thought, "Oh, okay, we could do that." So we went out, and luckily nothing sank and nobody had to get picked up. But it was an interesting night. Watch these no-wake zones. We got a lot of seasonal ones around here. The buoys shift, so make sure you know where they were supposed to be, not where they are. AOM, I'm going to ignore all the detail stuff in here because the thing's got about another half a week to live. I don't think the first item is even correct because I've had orders that went overnight and we did it all on one set of orders. No idea what the new thing is going to look like. We'll find out when it gets here. Code 01D, operational standby. You need to show some prep time and some debrief time before and after every mission. If I was screening missions for approval and saw them without that time that we know must happen, right? Because you're got to go through your risk assessment, you got to get the boat ready. Could be a lot more than that. I would kick back any orders that didn't include that in the documentation, and that counts against your duty day. We spoke about that earlier, the crew fatigue parameters. So if you were doing 2 missions and one of them involved cleaning the boat for an hour afterwards, that would count against your underway time for the day. If you're not familiar with those rules, go back and read the operations policy manual. Okay, 22 Alpha, you don't need a QE to be on board. You use it if it is a QE check ride. You put our names in the comments block. We don't get underway time for that. We document our time through a separate channel. This mid-patrol crew change business, don't believe it. Nobody looks at these orders, and the system's going away anyway. Maybe the new one will work differently, but generally speaking, everybody that's on the boat for any part of the mission has been getting credit for the whole thing, regardless of how long they were out there. I got credit for a 7-hour flight the other day and only took about an hour and a half. It was kind of cool. All right, the IS officer will adjust the entries in Ox data. I've got one sitting next to me. You ever done that
Yes.
in the paper days?
No, I have access.
Okay. But the orders do not normally flow through the IS officer.
Anymore. They used to.
Yeah, that's some old language that's still hanging around with us. 2-3 Alpha, all right, if we're doing SAR standby, if you're going to take a boat down to the station and take a day or a weekend shift, holidays, B1 status for an air crew, you got to be there, you got to be in uniform and ready to go. And again, the duty day standards are going to play into that. All right, we talked about the expiration dates on the facilities. We talked about not completing the orders, even if the patrol was when the facility was still current. This was a fairly recent change. You have to affirmatively indicate which meals you provided to each crew member. So if you didn't feed them, you don't get paid for feeding them. If for some reason you ended up at a mess hall and got a free lunch from the Coast Guard, don't claim one. And I won't say where, but there were flotillas that were feeding themselves and then taking all the reimbursement, the meal reimbursement money, and putting it into a kitty for something that they wanted to buy. That's not a good idea, especially not if the auditor or the inspector general starts asking questions about that. All right, engine oil, that's part of your SAMA. For non-facility owners, that's the maintenance allowance that is provided to the operator or the owner of the facility to help for the wear and tear on the boat or the aircraft. We are still with the $75 receipt limit. Anything less than that does not include a receipt. If you're continuously claiming $74.99 for your fuel expenses, you're walking the tightrope. If it really is $74.99, put the receipt in. No harm. And you got 30 days after the patrol's over to complete the orders. Okay, so whoever's getting reimbursed for the patrol has to either pay or feed the crew. I didn't find out about that till I'd been out on the boats for like 2 or 3 years. I had no idea that they got paid. Okay. The new Ox data system. All right. All I know is it's based on a commercial product called Salesforce, and hopefully it will be everything we dreamt of. But we won't know that for another 3 weeks or so.
They did training. They're doing training this week.
Okay. I'm informed that they're doing training on the new Ox data system this week. I suppose that is
Sue Hastings.
one of the train the trainer sessions
Yes, online.
that will get cascaded down to the flotillas. I'm going to ask a question here. If anybody knows whether there's any special requirements from District 7, or if we've got people from other districts, if you've got any examples of requirements over and above the national rules, I'd like to hear about them. I can think of one. David, if anybody types a special requirement into the chat room, could you share that? Okay, I can't see what's going on in the chat room there. The only one I can think of here in District 7 is a requirement for speed-rated life jackets on facilities that have a certain top end. You got to have life jackets that are rated for 50 or 100 miles an hour, depending on what it is. And that's not a flotation issue. That's usually it just means an extra strap for the vests that go around your chest.
Walter, I have one person who said that Robert Garrett, who says that to install a 25-watt FM radio.
25-watt FM radios?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a requirement everywhere. I know that some of the local order issuing authorities have or your sector has any rules, just type it into the chat room. I'm trying to remember, but I think some of the boat stations wanted additional advance notice for offshore patrols. They wanted additional fuel to be carried offshore. Maybe I've got a memory that Jacksonville or somewhere on the Atlantic coast of Florida wanted everybody on the boat to be carrying flares if you were going offshore. So if you've got anything like that going on in your life as a surface operator, type it into the chat room and share it with the rest of us.
Are you aware that other districts do not require coxswains to have the 4 night hours?
All right, so I have an entry here, Walter. It says D7 requires coxswains to do 4 night hours. D5 requires all coxswains to do at least 8 hours in their 12 minimum as coxswains.
Okay, very good. Susan remembered that one. I should have myself. Yeah, that's another little legacy from the Hillsborough incident.
Oh.
So I don't know. I might be almost out of slides. Sea Scouts, we can't find any of those things around here. I know Craig's on the call tonight, and he looked long and hard, and closest Sea Scout bunch he could find was in North Carolina. So as far as I can tell, this is not going anywhere anytime soon in Sector Charleston. Maybe somewhere else in District 7. It's got legs. But for right now,
I have one more. Tom and Linda Timpidis, I apologize for the writing. It says 11 SR had a radar requirement for low visibility offshore.
That's
Okay.
Interesting. A logical.
There you go, Will Smith. They won't let you go out without a radar, and you're the only one of us that's got one.
I used to have one.
Okay.
That was just offshore.
Okay.
We have to learn to use it well.
Well, it's not a. I mean,
If you've got it, it's got to.
it's a fun thing to learn how to use.
Walter,
Correct.
a bunch of
Yeah.
other questions. So Douglas said, that's news to me. Where does it say that all coxswains in D7 have to do 4 night hours?
Oh my God.
Well, that question's so easy, I'm going to let my assistant take care of it. Susan?
Beats the heck out of me. I was just told that's the way it is.
So Douglas, actually, I can add that a little bit as a training officer in the past. When you actually get your training hours as an Excel, meeting the requirements, it will show you, so you can actually ask your IS officer and the coxswain and the person. So everybody needs to have a certain amount of hours, but it definitely says that a coxswain has to have 4 night hours minimum. There'll be a count next to your name.
David,
Yep.
the thing about that is when you do those night hours, make sure that you make the comments. In the comments, I always put what time sunset was that night and what time I stayed out, because that is not something that is entered automatically. The IS officer has got to pull that off of the 7030 and hand enter it. If you don't put it in, it could get missed.
Another comment also from Jack and also Winston. They said that if you have a radar, it must run at night.
Yes. If you have a radar, it has to be on the whole time.
Yep, it has to be in use.
That's in the manual.
Yep.
If you've got it, it's got to be on.
Okay. To answer your question, I think that the 4-hour requirement for District 7 was put out by the DIROCs about 4 years ago, again, after a mishap.
Mhm.
And right now it is, it's a lot of manual work for Sue Hastings to track how much night time a particular patrol involved. So
The more you put in, the easier it is for her.
yeah, that's a good point from Susan. So there's something to put in your comments block if you're out at sundown or before sunrise. Just note the time that sunrise actually took place.
Walter, a question associated with that, what came from Rick Larry. Is that nautical sunset? How is that calculated?
It's the official sunset time.
There's 3 of them. It's the civil, nautical, and I forget what the other one was. I don't know. Good question for Sue.
Okay, so a question that came in from Jim. It says, Walter, the night requirements vary per sector. All have 4 hours, but some have additional requirements.
Okay.
Okay. And then a question from Douglas. It says, a patrol here in Sector St. Pete and no auxiliaries are allowed to get 9 hours.
What sector is this?
In St. Pete, there's no night hours allowed?
No auxiliaries are, I'm sorry, stand corrected. Hold on, let me read it. Auxiliaries are allowed to get night orders. No auxiliaries. It says no auxiliaries are allowed to get night orders. So I'm not so sure. I guess they'd have to check with their sector on that.
Jeez.
That's correct. This is Douglas. That's correct. You're not allowed to have night hours down here. Now, of course, this teleconference is about sectors Charleston. So, but I just thought it can't be a District 7-wide requirement because you're not even allowed to go out here in St. Pete as an auxiliarist at night.
Really?
I'm confused because I've been out
go out
with
all the
Sector
time.
St. Pete at night for doing C-130 drops.
you got a sector San Key, which is right next to is it Tampa Bay area.
Oh, you're talking about just the one boat station, St. Pete, not the whole sector.
Well,
St. Pete.
yeah, and that covers Tampa and the Bay of St.
Okay.
and St. Pete. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was, I mean, that was the mission at Sand Key was to take the boat out at night and let the C-130 find you.
Right. Yeah. As a PWO, I'm not allowed to patrol in St. Pete, but I have to get my orders up in Sand Key where they do allow PWO operations.
Okay, so
Okay,
also to
well.
stand clear, there is an email from Sean Thompson. It says the 4-hour requirement is a sector Charleston requirement only. So I guess maybe Walter, we need a clarification that we might have been speaking from our experience as a sector Charleston area.
Huh. Well, that's a new one on me. We'll check with Sue
Walter.
tomorrow and find out how broad that is.
Walter, this is Pat. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, who is it?
This is Pat McMenamin. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
hey, Pat.
Hey, there are night requirements for each sector, but they vary on what they have to do. So some have to do additional navigational things and stuff. So each sector has set their own requirements.
Do we know where those are documented?
It's in each sector's SOP.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So here's the people to yell at if you don't like what I said tonight. If you want to hear more of it, I got one other slide I'd like to share. And we'll go back to this other PowerPoint. If I can find it. And that's something that I'd like you to think about beyond proficiency. Oh, I did, yeah.
It's the one below it. It's got the insignia on it.
Yeah, so this is I should have shown this slide earlier. I was trying to build up to the need for proficiency in order to actually operate when you had to go help out somebody like the guy that was on the sailboat after Hurricane Irma a couple of years ago.
You got to launch the slide, Walter.
I have to what?
You launch it right now. It's project them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you got the sailboat in the marsh now?
Yep.
Okay. So the idea was to visually explain why we needed to train and equip and practice and manage risks so that we could go out and do worthwhile missions like helping the guy on this boat. But the note I wanted to close on was particularly given the forced downtime that we're dealing with now, I'd like coxswains and crews to maybe try and talk their way through some of the aspects of the operational excellence program. This is a program that's been out there for about 15 years. It is a set of exercises including search planning, navigation planning and execution, pump drills, communication drills, and basic skills. The takeaway of the whole thing is sort of a QE check ride on steroids, where you get an active duty proctor to come and march you through the drills. That number at the top is the commandant instruction that explains the program. The graphic is the ribbon that goes along with it. And we had a lot of fun doing that. We were able to get one crew through this before things started going south early this month. In fact, it was just this month. Hard to believe. The world's moving rapidly on us, but I think it was just March 6th or so we had our check ride and got the first crew through it. So I encourage you, if you're already qualified and you think you're already proficient, why not strive for excellence? There's a path towards it, and it's all laid out for you. And if we can be of assistance with it, I'm happy to generate search scenarios and email them out to folks. We were able to do a lot of our training for this sort of in a remote fashion like we're doing tonight here. We would have Susan, in my case, would whip up a man overboard case and send us last known position and drift and whatnot. And we'd work out the problem. And sometimes we were on a boat and we'd go do it. Sometimes we were just sitting on a couch and we'd do the nav work and make sure that we knew what we would do if we were on a boat. So that's a freebie for you guys to go out and chase. I hope some of you take me up on it. And I'll thank you all for your time tonight. And I'll stay on the line if there's any questions.
Before people leave, Walter, I just want to make sure for some people who join late, please go ahead and put your first name, last name, flotilla number, and then your ID number if you have not yet done so in the chat, so that we actually have a record of everybody who actually was in attendance. Otherwise, you can go ahead and check out. I just got a nice little reminder from Philly Grace. Make sure you wash your hands, folks. Wash your hands at all times and be safe. But otherwise, if you join in late and did not put first name, last name, flotilla number, and your ID number, please do so in the chat room so we can actually confirm your attendance. So Ms. Susan White can actually go ahead and put you into a 7039. Otherwise, this recording will be made available. I'm going to stop the recording portion of it right now, but we'll stay online, like Walter has said, for questions or conversations. So I'll stop the recording.
Yeah, and